Welcome back to chapter 7 on further trigo. This video will focus on the next section of this chapter, which is on bearings. By the end of this video, I hope you can achieve the following objectives: define, draw, and calculate bearings. Now, what did you learn in the previous videos? You learned about angle of elevation and angle of depression. Now, how do you describe them as simply as possible? Angle of elevation is when you look up. Angle of depression is when you look down. And how do you draw them? For angle of elevation, you always start with a horizontal line and then the line of sight. This is the angle of elevation. Likewise for angle of depression. Okay, you look down. First thing, draw the horizontal line, the line of sight, and this is your angle of depression. So for this angle of elevation and depression, it's just you looking at an object which is higher than you or lower than you. How about objects which are on your left and on your right? How do you use angles to identify them? That is the main objective of this video. Those angles that we want to find, they are called bearings. Okay, one example is the following. This man, he can go to a bazaar somewhere on his right, or to a gym somewhere on his left. So this somewhere right, somewhere left, we call it bearing. Okay, but bearing is an angle. So later you are going to learn how to draw and define them. But notice, he's holding on to a compass. Bearings are usually determined using compass. Okay, I'm sure you know or have heard about this. Compasses is what allow people to go from one place to another in the past, and what they are actually following is bearings. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, let's talk a bit more about compass. Okay, the north, south, east, west, and the in-betweens, the northwest, southeast, southwest. Okay, all of these directions, they have an angle. Okay, for example, the north, south, and east-west line, they are always perpendicular. Here and here. Okay, and the southeast and the south is half of 90, which is 45 degrees. So here is 45 degrees. Here is also 45 degrees. Here is also 45 degrees. Now, these directions are important in bearings. Let me demonstrate. Let's say there's a person standing here, and his friend is standing somewhere to the east of him. Where will his friend be? One possible position is here. Or let's say he has another friend who is somewhere on the north of him. Where will his friend be? Somewhere there. Okay? So these directions, north, south, east, west, are very important. So make sure you know which direction is where. Okay, let's proceed. Now, how to find the bearing of an object from where you are? Remember, bearing tells you to locate an object somewhere on your left, somewhere on your right. It does not matter whether the object is very tall or very short. In fact, it doesn't matter what the height of the object is. What matters here is where the object is on your right or on your left. So let's say you want to find the bearing using compass. You always put the compass parallel to the ground. Okay, since the ground is flat, so you place your compass parallel to it, so that the needle of the compass either points left or point right. If you slant it, it won't be accurate. So after you have done this, okay, you have the side view and the top view. The next thing you do is you face north. Okay, you face north. So we look at this from the top view. Okay, top view is the best view for bearings. So in this picture, you notice there is a table there, and on top of the table is a mark. So we are going to find the bearing of the mark from this person. So first, okay, in the previous slide, he placed the compass parallel to the ground. Now he must face north. Look at his compass. Is he facing north? No, he is facing west. And where is the north? Based on the compass, the north is to his right. Okay, so we must face north. Therefore, the person must turn to his right. There. Now he is facing north. So far so good. Next, you draw a north line at the person. Now this is something similar to angle of elevation and depression. When you draw angle of elevation or depression, what do you draw? What do you first draw? You draw a horizontal line. Similar here, but this time you draw a north line. That means a line that is facing the north. So it will be something like this. Okay, so first you face the north, and then you draw a north line, a line that points to the north. Okay, next, you draw your line of sight. Okay, what is line of sight? Line of sight is the line that joins the person who is looking and the object he is looking at. In this case, the line of sight must be from the person to the mark, as follows. Okay. Now you may start to recall some things. Okay, this is how we define angle of elevation and depression in previous videos. But please don't be confused here. Right now we are calculating bearing. So we face the north, we draw the north line, and we draw the line of sight. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Bearing is the angle measured from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Okay? So your angle must be from the north line to the mark, and when it travels from the north line to the mark, it must be in a clockwise direction. For those of you who do not know what is clockwise direction, just look at this simple clock. The hands of this clock always move in a clockwise direction. Okay, so how do you draw an angle that moves clockwise from the north line to the line of sight? It will be something like this. So this is the bearing. Okay, you might think, oh, it's so simple, it's just like angle of elevation or depression. Okay, this is just a simple case. Now let's revise and recall what you have just learned till now. If you want to find the bearing of object A from object B, okay, just like what you did in the previous videos, identify what is the object that is looking and the object that is being looked at. To find the bearing of, after that statement, that object is the object being looked at. To find the bearing from, after that statement, the object is the object which is looking. Okay, so the object which is looking must face the north, and after he face the north, draw a north line at that object, and then you draw the line of sight. And this is the important part. The bearing is the angle from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise direction. Okay, we are going to do some examples on this to make the understanding stronger. Okay, but pause this video and understand these steps carefully and slowly. Try to compare this to the steps that you take when you want to draw angle of elevation and depression. They are very similar. For angle of elevation and depression, at the object which is looking, you draw a horizontal line. Here, at the object which is looking, you draw a north line. So something similar. Okay, let's proceed. Now, my table and the mark on top of the table are somewhere on the left. Okay, and once again we are finding bearing from the top view. Okay, remember, when you find bearing, you only care where the object is on the left or on the right. You do not care whether the object is taller or shorter than you. That's why the top view is the best view for bearings. Okay, so the person is already facing north, so draw the north line which is already drawn here. What's next? Draw the line of sight. Okay, and then yes, the crucial part, the bearing is the angle drawn from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Okay, I have displayed the clock to show you, to remind you what is clockwise motion. Just follow the hands of the clock and that is clockwise. Okay, so always start from the north line and go to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Is this the bearing? Okay, it's not. Why? From the north line and then you go to the line of sight, the motion is not clockwise, it is anti-clockwise. It is moving in the opposite direction of the hands of the clock. So this is not the bearing. The bearing must be from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Something like this. This is clockwise. So this is the bearing. Okay, let's do another example. This person is on a park. Somewhere on his left is a tree. Somewhere on his right or behind him is a little weird creature there. Okay, once again, we always calculate bearing from the top view. So let's go to the top view. Okay, the person is already facing north. Okay, in what follows, we will always assume the person is already facing north. Okay, the top view. First, draw the north line. Okay, so let's find the bearing of the cat first from the person. Draw the line of sight. Okay, now the crucial part. The bearing is from the north line to the line of sight clockwise. So how do you draw it? Yes, it's like this. So this is the bearing of the cat from the person. Next, let's find the bearing of the tree from the person. Okay, this is line of sight. How do I draw an angle from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner? Yes, it is this angle. Okay, once again, to know where is clockwise, just follow the motion of the hands on a clock. Now, you might be thinking, how do I measure this angle? If I use a protractor, the protractor can only measure from 0 to 180 degrees. This angle here is more than 180 degrees. So how do I measure it? Think for a moment. Okay, you must know that angle at a point is 360 degrees. So use the compass, measure this small angle first. And then to find the bearing, you just subtract this angle from 360 degrees. Okay, let's do a bit of activity. Now, you are seated in your normal seating arrangement in your classroom. Let's take the direction of the north to be the front part of the classroom, which is the direction of your whiteboard and the front wall. So if I put a compass here, the north will be in a direction that is pointing towards your whiteboard and the front wall. Okay, this is only an example. Okay, I don't know if this is actually north, but let's assume it is. So from the side view, let's say I'm standing here, then my north will be facing the whiteboard. How about the rest of you? Okay, from the top view, your north will be facing the front. Okay, so these are the students in your class, not all of them. Alright, understand? Okay, now the task is the following. What is the bearing of the class monitor from you? The bearing of the class monitor from you. Once again, what is the object that is being looked at? The class monitor. What is the object that is looking? You. Okay, so the north line must be drawn at you, which is already drawn here, and the person inside the yellow circle, that is a class monitor. Now figure out, okay, for the different people here, how would you draw the bearing of the class monitor from each of them? Pause this video and think. Let's start with this person who is sitting exactly to his left. Okay, now the north line has already been drawn, so next you must draw the line of sight, which is this, and you draw the angle from the north line to the line of sight in what manner? In a clockwise manner. So it will be something like this. Okay, since they are seated side by side, this angle will be 90 degrees. Now notice, for bearing, I did not write 90 degrees. Instead, I write 090. So if your angles are like 1 degrees or 22 degrees, okay, add a few zeros in front. Bearings are always written as 3-digit numbers, 3 and more digit numbers. Okay, these 3 and more digit numbers do not include decimal. So if your angle is 90 degrees, 90 degrees is 2 digit. Okay, all bearings must be 3 digit and more. So just add a 0 in front. 090 degrees. Okay, next, this person, the north line is already drawn, so the line of sight is here. And how again do you draw the bearing? From the north line to the line of sight in what manner? In a clockwise manner. Okay, Okay, so this one roughly around 70 degrees, but 70 is 2 digit. All bearings must be 3 digit and above. So I write as 070 degrees. Now, how about this person who is seated exactly behind him? The north line is drawn. Now pay attention to the line of sight. It overlaps with the north line. So the line of sight and the north line are on top of each other. So what is the angle formed? It's 0 degrees. Okay, now 0 is 1 digit. But just now I said bearings, we always write 3 digits and more. So I should have written this as 000 degrees. Okay, but 0 degrees is understandable, okay? So instead of writing 000, just write it as 0. Okay, let's proceed to another person. Who will be the lucky one this time? This person. North line is drawn. So next you draw the line of sight. How do I draw bearings again? From the north line to the line of sight. In what manner? Clockwise manner. Okay, this one roughly around 290 degrees. Okay, 290 degrees is 3 digits, so it's okay. Okay, bearings must be 3 digits and more. Okay, one last one. Who's the lucky one? This dude here. North line is drawn. Line of sight. The bearing is from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. So this one is roughly 245 degrees. Okay, I hope you understand a little bit more on how bearings are calculated. Okay, once again, for bearings, we only care where the object is on the left or on the right. We don't care if they are tall or they are short. And for bearings, very similar to angle of elevation and depression. Okay, draw the north line, draw the line of sight, and the angle is measured from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, let's do a little bit of recap. Okay, what I've just mentioned just now. Okay, very similar to finding angle of elevation and depression. Identify which object is being looked at and which object is looking. And then you draw the north line at the object which is looking. Just like how you draw the horizontal line at the object which is looking. Okay, then you draw the north line at that object, line of sight, and the bearing. Okay, now draw the north line exactly at the object which is looking. So I hope by now you should be able to identify the objects which is looking and the objects which is being looked at. Okay, these steps are very similar to angle of elevation and depression, except for the last step where the bearing has to be measured in a clockwise manner. Okay, let me illustrate with a few examples. The bearing of point B from point A. First thing, identify. Point B is the object being looked at. Point A is the object which is looking. So at which point do you draw the north line? At the object which is looking, which is point A. Draw the north line. Now don't be too shy here. Draw the north line as long as possible. Next, line of sight. Okay, now comes the important part. The bearing is taken from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Here comes the confusion. Do you start drawing on the north line above point A or below point A? Okay, you should draw above point A. Okay, so you start from a point above point A on the north line and then you go clockwise. So this is the bearing. Okay, next, bearing of A from B. So now what is the object that is looking? A or B? Okay, B. So at point B, you draw the north line. Once again, don't be too shy. Draw the line as long as possible. Line of sight. And then the bearing from the north line to the line of sight in a clockwise manner. Okay. Now, at which point on the north line do you start drawing from? Like mentioned in the previous slide, you draw above point B. Somewhere here. And then you go clockwise. That is the bearing. Now, in this example, my north is facing up. Okay? We always draw the north line parallel to the north direction given in the question. Most of the time, the north line is always facing up. What if the north line is facing sideways? Once again, bearing of B from A. So I hope you know point A is where is the object that is looking, and point A is where you draw the north line. But this time the north line must be parallel to this north direction. So it's something like this. Okay? The north line must be parallel to the north direction given by the question. Line of sight and bearing from the north line to the line of sight. Okay, you start from above point A and you go clockwise. This is the bearing. So far so good? Okay, now this chapter on bearings will involve parallel lines. Okay, now if you draw the north lines at A and B, these two north lines, they are parallel. And recall, if they are parallel, you can use alternate angles, interior angles, corresponding angles. So how do we locate them? This angle the same as this angle because alternate angles. Here same as here, also alternate angles. Okay, now this and this not the same, but they add up to give you 180 degrees. This is interior angles. Same goes for this and this. They add up to give you 180 degrees. Okay, interior angles. I can define them interior alternate angles simply because the two north lines are parallel. Okay, there must be parallel lines present if you want to use alternate or interior or corresponding angles. If the lines are not parallel, you cannot use it. Okay, so let's revise. Okay, there is a lot of information that you have obtained here up till here. So slowly, to find the bearing of point B from point A, identify which object is which. So point A is the object which is looking. Point B is the object being looked at. You draw your north at which point? Yes, point A. And make sure the north line is parallel to the north direction given here. So you draw it here. Then you draw the line of sight, which is this one. And then the bearing is drawn from the north line to the line of sight as follows in a clockwise manner. And remember, you start drawing from a point above point A on the north line, and then you go clockwise. And then we did the following. Okay, we identified the alternate angles where they are equal and interior angles where they add up to give you 180 degrees. Now, there's no point in learning if you don't know how it's applied. So this is a map. Okay, let's apply bearings here. Do you notice the compass direction at the bottom there? Where is the north? Somewhere here. My question is, what is the bearing of Mount Pleasant from St. Eleanor's? Okay, step by step. What is the object that is looking? The Mount Pleasant or St. Eleanor's? Is the St. Eleanor's. So at St. Eleanor's, you draw the north line. Make sure it's parallel to the north direction given at the bottom part of the map. So it'll be something like this. Then, line of sight. Okay, so draw a line connecting Mount Pleasant and St. Eleanor's. Then, bearing from the north line to the line of sight. Okay, you start drawing on the north line where? Okay, above the point St. Eleanor's. So something like this. So this is the bearing of Mount Pleasant from St. Eleanor's. Okay, let me go through very quickly practice now 3 so that you can practice on your own similar questions in the textbook. You are given this one, north, south, east, west line. Remember, north, south and east, west lines are always perpendicular. Okay, find the bearing of A from O. Step 1. What is the object that is looking? A or O? Yes, O. O is the object that is looking. So O is there. So at O, you draw a north line. In this case, it's already drawn for you. But let me highlight it. This is a north line. Okay. Now forgive me for the terrible sketch. Okay. After I draw my north line, I need to draw the line of sight. So I draw the line AO. And how do I draw my bearing? From the north line to this line of sight. In what manner? In a clockwise manner. And how do I start drawing on the north line? I start drawing from a point above point O. So this is the bearing of A from O. Now you know how to draw, but right now let's find the value. Like I said, north-south line, east-west line are perpendicular. So if that is 40, then my bearing must be 90 minus 40, 50 degrees. Okay, I made a mistake here. Remember, for bearings, it must be 3 digit and more, correct? So the bearing here must be 050 degrees. Please take note, there is an error here. The bearing is 050 degrees. Next, bearing of B from O. Okay, so what is the object that is looking? O, which is here. So at point O, I draw the north line. It's already drawn, so let me highlight for you. Line of sight, the line OB. And then you draw the bearing from the north line to this line of sight in a clockwise manner. Now, you start drawing on the north line from above point O. So something like this. That is the bearing. Okay, you know how to draw. Now you need to find the value. Angle at a point is always 360 degrees. So the bearing is simply 360 minus 30 degrees, which is 330 degrees. Next, finding the bearing of O from A. Once again, what is the object that is looking? O or A? Okay, it's A. So at point A, I draw my north line. Okay, make sure my north line is parallel to the north direction given here. Okay, then line of sight, AO. Next, bearing is from the north line to this line of sight in a clockwise manner. So, where do I start drawing on the north line? Above point A. This is my bearing. Okay, now this will take more than one step. How am I going to find this bearing? Notice that the north-south line and east-west line are always 90 degrees. So this will be 50 degrees. Okay, now if that is 50, okay, and I highlighted the north line there, now I have two north lines. Recall, two north lines, they are parallel lines. So if that is 50 degrees, this must be, recall, what are the angles, what are the special angles in from parallel lines? This must be 130 degrees because interior angles. So can I now find my bearing? Yes, 360 minus 130. Now if I'm too fast, please pause the video and understand the steps again. Lastly, bearing of O from B. Okay, by now you should know, point B, you draw the north line. Then you draw the line of sight, OB. Then you draw the bearing from the north line to this line of sight in a clockwise manner. So you start drawing on the north line where? Above point B. So something like this. Okay, how do we find this value? Okay, let me highlight the north line here. Now can you tell me what is the relationship between the bearing represented by the red angle and this 30 degrees? Okay, they are interior angles. So 180 minus 30 will give me my bearing. Okay, before you end this video, go through the practice now again and be familiar with the steps. Okay, now what do you learn from all of this? Finding the bearing of something from something. We always focus on the from something. That from something, you always draw the north line at. And how do you draw bearings? You always draw in a clockwise manner. From where to where? From the north line to the line of sight. Now please spend some time to read through the practice now again. This will be the end of the video.